How's it going, Martians? Welcome back to another Martian Report. In today's report, I'm going to be doing a rebuttal against a video Moon Lambo made where he's defending his position to suggest to his viewers that XRP and Bitcoin are correlated. And this is because I sent a tweet to him after watching his video, Veteran Trader XRP on the Verge of a 55% Breakout, where he suggested that XRP and Bitcoin are correlated. Now, the reason why, well, first off, my tweet to him was, Moon Lambo, it's becoming a trigger hearing you say that XRP is correlated to Bitcoin. They are so not correlated that over the last 100 days, their correlation has been negative. Please stop sharing this misleading opinion with your viewers. Now, I guess this was a really poorly worded tweet, to be honest. You know, after listening to Moon Lambo read it or Matt read it on his channel, it was apparent that it came off as a microaggression to him, and I apologize. It genuinely does cause me anxiety, though, when you say in your videos that XRP is correlated to Bitcoin. And I'm going to explain why. But first, I have to share this meme with you that just popped up in my feed from XRP Yoda. And it's Yoda says, "Banks will never use XRP, Mr. Duck." Oh, I could listen to it laugh all day at the absurdity of that statement, right? And I think everybody in the XRP community, Moon Lambo too, you're going to enjoy this tweet. It's fantastic. So now that we got a few laughs out of the way, let's drill into why I'm suggesting that Moon Lambo is misinforming his viewers. And it's not that I feel that Moon Lambo, first off, is intentionally misleading his viewers. I think that it really comes down to a matter of Moon Lambo does not have formal education when it comes to the term correlation in regards to investing. So instead of presenting my opinions or trying to use debate tactics to win over my viewers, I'm simply going to refer to sources. All right. So this source, as far as us first, we need to understand when it comes to determining whether or not assets are correlated or are non-correlated, you must first understand what a correlation coefficient is. So a correlation coefficient is a statistical measure that calculates the strength of the relationship between the relative movements of two variables. The values range between -1 and 1. A calculated number greater than 1 or less than -1 means that there was an error in the calculation measurement. And a correlation of -1 shows a perfect negative correlation, while a correlation of 1 shows a perfect positive correlation. And a correlation of 0 shows no relationship between the movements of the two variables. Now, to clarify further on this, I want to be clear. A correlation of 0 does not just show no relationship between the movement of two variables. It shows a perfect non-correlation between two variables. And this is the reason I'm stating this is so that we can get over a misunderstanding about how in finance or in investing, an expert would determine whether or not two assets or two investment options are correlated or non-correlated. And the defining ranges are at the bottom of this little section here. I actually provide a little snippet in one of my tweets to Moon Lambo, but I think that he misinterpreted the little snippet as something that I just typed up, as opposed to something that is coming from a highly trustworthy and valuable resource for investors, Investopedia here, right? And it reads, the strength of the relationship varies in degrees based upon the value of the correlation coefficient. For example, a value of 0.2 shows that there is a positive correlation between two variables, but it is weak and likely insignificant. Experts do not consider correlations significant until the value surpasses at least 0.8. However, a correlation coefficient with an absolute value of 0.9 or greater would represent a very strong relationship. Now, what is important to take away from this last section is that the definitive range for assets to be defined as having significant correlations, in other words, being correlated assets, or insignificant correlations or non-correlated assets, is 0.8. Now, you can also have an inverse correlation or a negative correlation at negative 0.8, and that's not included in here, but that is how you have, that would be a inverse correlation between two assets. That is not something that is that we're going to have to worry about in this, not too much so, but just want to preface that just because there is some negative correlation involved within the measurements of XRP Bitcoin moving forward. Now, to drive home further this position, I'm going to rely on Maroda Wealth Management, specifically David John Maroda, who is a wealth manager. And this article, which he's written up regarding the best non-correlated asset classes for the S&P 500. Now, when you come down here to his breakdown here, you'll see that you have 5 sectors which David has considered to be non-correlated assets. And he says, I looked at a different measurement for the best non-correlated assets for the S&P 500 Total Return Index, and that is investments with a low correlation with the S&P 500, but a similar or higher mean return. There are some great candidates along with their approximate correlation with the S&P 500. Now take note of the correlation coefficients present, okay? So within the US REITs, the correlation coefficient is 0.6. Within energy, it's 0.65. Within health, it's 0.66. Freedom countries have a correlation of 0.69, and emerging markets have a correlation of 0.72. And again, from a traditional wealth manager, David John Maroda, that is his profession, is as a financial advisor, which neither myself or Moon Lambo are. This is why I'm referring to somebody who's actually an expert when it comes to investing as to what is considered a non-correlated asset. You can see that even as high as a correlation of 0.72, he is considering these markets to be non-correlated to the S&P 500, and says in here, right here, that these are investments with a low correlation to the S&P 500. So 0.72 is considered a low correlation. Now, with this out of the way, let's go to first Moon Lambo's source for the correlation between XRP and Bitcoin. And this is an article from AMP Crypto titled XRP and XLM have the least correlation with Bitcoin among the top 10 cryptocurrencies list. This was posted about a month ago as well, which will be a little bit important when we move forward. But as you can see on this matrix, which was provided by Unfoldeds on Twitter, I believe, and you can see here that this is a 1-month correlation matrix. You see 1M correlation matrix. And it shows XRP and BTC's correlation at 56.52%. Now, within the correlation coefficient, that would be represented by 0.5652, because it is the idea with a coefficient is that it is a decimal representation of a percentage, right? A percentage correlation. So 0.56. And this is what led me to tell Moon Lambo that even from his source, there is not any evidence presented that XRP is correlated to Bitcoin, because its correlation percentage or correlation coefficient is so low that no traditional financier, no traditional investment advisor would suggest that these two assets are correlated. They would say that they are non-correlated assets. Now, my evidence, which I presented to him, and I presented this, I think I actually shared this even before he presented this article to me, is of a spread of over 100 days. And this is most recent data too. It actually goes up to the, to November 1st. So literally yesterday was included into this, and it goes back all the way to July 25th. This is not a random data selection. This is present correlation. And this shows that the correlation coefficient is at negative 0.21. All right. Now, what is important to take note between my source and Moonlambo's source is the time frame on which the correlation coefficient is being derived from. Moonlambo's is a data set of 30 days. Mine is 100 days. Therefore, mine is providing a more large picture representation of the correlation between these two assets. And that's important because you can get very false figures from a very narrow selection of data. And this is something that Moonlambo actually pointed out in his rebuttal video, or in his video to me, which I'm now providing in a more cohesive position, or from a more cohesive position of why it is that he actually has fallen into the same fallacy which he believes that I had by sharing these two charts of just the last month of activity between Bitcoin and XRP, where you don't even have to run correlation coefficient. It is very clear that there is little to no correlation between these assets when you look at these two charts, right? Now, here's something really fun that we can do with both my figure and Moonlambo's figure, and this is based upon something that Jeffrey Dow Jones, who is a hedge fund analyst, research analyst, and a portfolio strategist over at Seeking Alpha, has done in regards to comparing the S&P and investment-grade corporate bonds. Now, he presents here that since 2008, the correlation coefficient with the S&P 500 is 0.05. Since 1996, the correlation coefficient is negative 0.01. So the R squared of these two equals 0.00. Now, his data points have a ratio of 1 to 5. So the 0.05 covers 3 years, whereas the negative 0.01 covers 15 years. So 3 divided by 5, or 3 divided by 15 equals 5. So 1 to 5, right? And so our data sets are a month, so 30 days, and 100 days versus 100 days. So it's, for all intents and purposes, 1 to 3. Now, when you take these 1 to 3 ratio, this my data set, which has 3 times more data and results in a negative 0.21, and his, which is a 30-day set, which results in a 0.56, and you R-square these, they actually come out to being just slightly negatively correlated even still. So the end result still results in, even when you combine both of our sources, mine and Matt's, you actually end up with a correlation coefficient that is virtually 0. It's negative 0.03, all right? And so that is so close to 0, there is no position from which I feel that Matt can defend his stance that XRP and BTC are correlated assets, or have been correlated assets for some time now, actually. And, you know, I understand Matt being skeptical, especially because, you know, we had a debate on Twitter. This is the worst medium ever to try and have a nuanced discussion. So I completely understand why Matt is still skeptical and still holding to his guns that XRP and BTC are correlated. But hopefully this video has provided enough evidence, and I've provided my position coherently enough that he'll understand why it is that, I feel anxiety when I hear him say that these two assets are correlated. And it wasn't meant to as a microaggression to say that I've felt triggered. It's literally, I feel anxiety when you say this, Matt. So it's nothing personal, brother. Like I said, I think I said at the beginning of this one, I've done so many takes, I don't know. But I really appreciate your content. I love your content, Matt. You are hilarious. When we moon and we both have our Lambos, I can't wait to meet up with you on the beaches somewhere, brother, because you have fantastic energy. And so it was not meant as a jab at you or a microaggression, because you're fantastic. And I hope you keep making the great content you do. I just want to help make sure that we, as a collective, as a YouTube community creating content regarding XRP, are providing the most not just the most objective content for our viewers, but are really being careful with the words that we use, so that we're not implying things to our viewers that may actually mislead them to believe that, well, I could invest in XRP or Bitcoin, they're going to do the same thing because they're correlated, right? And that's really why I made this, because I was just putting myself in the position of somebody who doesn't know anything about investing or correlation versus causation, and just the general layman's understanding of the word correlated when it comes to the movements between markets. And I hope you understand, and you now, since I've made a video about it, you actually understand why it is. Not trying to, I am trying to be convincing, but I'm trying to be convincing from a position of just providing insight into why I feel triggered when you say that these two assets are correlated, right? So thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you for watching my video, Moon Lambo. Hope you all enjoyed. I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. As always, on Mars.